Alright, I just want to make a real quick video about the Mamiya, older Mamiya M645. I assume this probably applies to the 1000 and the J model as well. But the issue I had was, well, first off, this thing was burning through batteries. So like I'd put a battery in it and the next day the battery would be dead. And then I also noticed when I did longer exposures, like specifically 2, 4, and 8 second, when I was done, there was this clicking noise that it was making. It was just going click, click. Let's see if I can replicate it. I can't replicate it. I fixed it now, which is good. But basically, what happens is this solenoid right here kept going like this, making a clicking sound. I don't know why it's doing that. I assume it's trying to reset the shutter somehow. So the whole problem, it has everything to do with these contacts here. There's actually, and it's kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can get the light a little bit better. Yeah. So you'll notice that there's two contacts here. There's one on the top and one on the bottom. And well, the way this is supposed to work, and it's really hard to tell, but there's supposed to be a tiny, itty little bit of space in between them right here. And if there's not, if this arm on top here is sitting on them, you'll hear that clicking noise, and I was having, yeah, there you go. You can hear it now, right? So when I first opened this, I thought that these contacts were dirty. So, and they may have been. So I went in there and I cleaned in between them with some alcohol very carefully. You don't want to bend these things too much because you'll never get them back into shape. That didn't really work. So then I saw that there is some adjustment. Well, there's some screws that keeps this whole switch assembly on here. There's two of them. One is underneath the wires. You can see I had to dig for it here, and there's another one here. And if you loosen those, you can kind of tilt this whole switch assembly this way and this way. And I thought, well, maybe it's like a calibration where, you know, maybe I need to push it a little further this way or a little further this way and then lock it down. And none of that was working either. So what I ended up finding out, and this was just by mistake actually, I actually thought I broke the camera for a minute here. So I'm trying to do this with one hand. This spring that attaches to this piece of metal underneath the kind of darker colored one, you see how that's moving freely from this one on the top? What happened was, I guess over time from sitting, this one on the top, which is the what pushes on these switches, and this bottom piece were actually stuck together. They were moving together, and it was about like this. It was like rusted together. So what happens was this top arm was always pushing on those two switches, and you needed to push on these little switches because that's actually what closes the shutter after it opens. It's supposed to basically hammer onto those and close the shutter, but then when it's done, it's supposed to reset, and this should not be pushing on those two switches. So long story short, if you're having issues with that clicking noise, your battery's not, I assume, and I don't know yet, I'll have to see over the next day, I think the reason the battery was dying too was because these two contact switches here were stuck together. So I'm assuming that was keeping some sort of power on in the circuit here, and therefore that's what killed my battery. So long story short, getting back to it is, if you're having that issue, this piece here and this piece here need to be separate from each other, and they were kind of rusted together around this. Be very careful. What I did is I accidentally pushed this too far, and it went past these switches, and that kind of was a pain in the butt because then I had to take these screws out and lift that whole switch assembly up to get it back into place. But after that happened and I got it back together, then I noticed that these two plates were moving freely. So I put a little very, very fine oil in here and just kind of worked this joint so that way they move freely. And that has seemed to fix the issue. So hopefully that'll help somebody, because I couldn't find any videos on YouTube about this or how to resolve it. Another thing I figured out while I was in here, in case you're having this problem, when I put a good battery in this camera, I could tell it was working because the shutter would reset and allow me to take another image, but when I pushed down on the battery test button, the light was not lighting up. So when you push down, it's those two contacts. You can see the green light there. And what that was, in case you're having that issue, and it was really hard to see, but I found it when I opened it up, is there's a little orange wire, on mine it's orange at least, right here, that's soldered on to this little plate. This is actually the button, the top of the button. And that little tiny solder joint came undone, and that's all it took for the battery light to stop working. So very carefully with low temperature solder, you can reattach that wire, and then when you push here, your battery light will work. So while you're in here, I'm no camera expert, but I will probably just check all these cogs and see if there's anything else that looks dry. Maybe put on some more light oil on things. Obviously, you want to do that very sparingly because that can dry up over time and then cause more issues. But so hopefully this is helpful. Yeah, that's the culprit right there. So these two things need to move separate from each other. So hope this helps. I'm not really active on this channel, but feel free to like this video if it helped you with your Mamiya. Appreciate it.